Introducing ViziSmart Founder Talks, where we interview exceptional leaders making an impact in our world. Today, we're sitting down with Kyle Waldrep, founder of Dottid, acquired by JLL.
Hi, Kyle. Welcome. We're really happy to have you here with us today with ViziSmart podcast and newsletter. So, first thing, congratulations on your success with your business. And can you tell us and your audience about your journey so far and how did you go about starting your business and how did you exit it?
Sure. Good morning, Myrna and Bianca. Thank you for the time. So just as a quick background, I got into commercial real estate a little unexpectedly. I was going to be a broker post-college and then decided that I had an idea for a business. And it kind of all went from there. We didn't have any sort of family history in commercial real estate or anything like that. We never bought rental properties, never owned rental homes, never owned anything of the sort. And so I was a newbie, candidly, and during my interview process in the brokerage world, I just asked a bunch of questions, and those questions really lined up with really trying to figure out what the problems were that these brokers were experiencing day in, day out, especially as related to technology. Brokerage is a pretty simple business. You want to get tenants in a building, you want to get commissions off those deals, and that's kind of the story. I don't want to discount anything that brokers do, but it's not something that I think had been really informed by a lot of technology back in 2016. And as I then began to really learn, property technology was frankly very new. It was actually entering what I have now come to kind of realize is kind of the second phase of its life cycle, which was really the uptick in venture capital into property technology. And so that was all 2015, 2016. To fast forward everything, had the idea, cashed out my savings, moved home post-college, turned down a job offer at a brokerage firm, and then built Dottid. And then ultimately, we sold to JLL late last fall, and we're kind of off to the races with JLL this spring and moving forward.
Awesome. So what was Dottid?
So Dottid was a workflow tool. Dottid was not the high-tech things that necessarily you see today from agentic AI or anything like that. Obviously, those are newer as of the last 2 years, 3 years, et cetera, in terms of those becoming popular. But what we built was actually really unique at the time. We built what I would term the first true workflow platform for leasing and asset management. So think task management, deadlines, due dates, notifications, approvals, reminders, all in the guise of trying to understand the building and its performance, all in one spot for the asset manager, the owner of office, industrial, and retail real estate. And so we did that super well, and we built an incredible product. The market was a total nightmare for much of the time that we were in business, but we survived long enough to stay around. And then ultimately, JLL saw value in our product, and so we moved on to JLL.
Amazing. And how did that transpire? Like, how did you even get in contact with JLL to make that happen?
Yeah, I think just over the years, I made a lot of connections in the space, had a lot of relationships with people. I think everybody that works in commercial real estate knows that it's all about the people you meet. At least that's definitely the attitude in the brokerage and capital markets world. I think the same is true in the technology space of property technology. It is all about the people you meet and what you do with those relationships, how you nurture them. So a lot of the JLL conversations stemmed back years, frankly, 5+ years, and we made ultimately things happen and did it well. So deal got done, and long process. Selling to a larger business is no mean feat, but ultimately got it done, and we're excited to be part of that team.
And what inspired you to become an entrepreneur? Is it just an idea that you had to make things better, or?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was never the entrepreneur as a kid. I was never the lemonade stand guy with the resell candy or anything like that. I was the just hang out and do something by the book. I mean, the early days, I worked at my mom's OB-GYN office doing their kind of outside storage, call it chart categorization, et cetera. I mean, it's in the days of paper charts and before we had electronic medical records and before all that was mandated, et cetera. But I worked in an offsite storage facility with no air conditioning. And I think I really got to see the value of what an hour of work means, what a day of work means, what it means to work hard. Obviously, growing up in the household that I did, my mother was incredibly influential on this because she started her own business. She started the first female women's OB-GYN practice with her partner Kim Vernon back in 1983 in the state of Texas. And so that was just something that if you grow up in a household like that, you learn very quickly what it means to earn a dollar and what it means to earn something on your own that you work for. And not to say that other people are not working, that is not the point. But you learn very quickly what's important and how to do it.
How amazing. My mother's also an OBGYN, so I kind of have
Oh,
a
you get
similar
it.
background. It's
Did you
cool.
ever work in an offsite storage categorizing charts
With no air
or
conditioning.
Oh. I did spend a lot of time in hospitals waiting.
yes. No, well.
So, where do you see technology going forward in the future? And specifically, what is most needed in the real estate industry?
Yeah, I've been asked this frequently the last couple years. I have a really hard and fast opinion on on this answer, candidly. Long story short, real estate needs to decide that it wants innovation. And in a lot of ways, the marketplace ultimately will decide for it. Innovation's coming. It's just going to happen. So, like, whether real estate ultimately decides or not is a little bit less relevant. It could be very relevant if it would decide and say, hey, as owners of real estate and the pension fund managers, the investment fund managers, they want to value these things. They could really make a step forward in bringing the industry into the 21st century. But I don't think that on the whole has happened. I think you see some fund managers and some institutions that have made really giant leaps forward. Blackstone is like 1A in that obvious answer. But then there's a lot of the other allocators and a lot of the fund managers that really, frankly, have not and haven't gotten out of old processes and haven't gotten off legacy technology. And so where I see the future of the space and where I see the future of innovation is I think the capital continue flowing into property technology because there's incredible opportunity. And AI has just transformed that, obviously, over the last 2.5 years. I know we're going to have a little bit deeper discussion about AI here in a second, so I won't go too deep into that. But I think that the automation of work, the automation of processes, the automation of data, and really just trying to better understand how does a building run more efficiently, simply. Because you have a lot of things that are going on in a building. If I think about the property management space of a just traditional mid-rise office building, there's a lot to happen. You've got to look at vendors and contractors, insurance. You've got to look at refrigerant tracking. You've got to look at all the maintenance requests you're getting from tenants. There's just so many different things to go check, interact with. How does AI come around that? How do you create chatbots? How do you create agentic AI to go in and solve some of these things and automate that? I think that's a huge part of the conversation. But that's just property management, and that's just one piece of the pie. And so I think that there's so many other areas of this space where you've got to go figure out like, okay, how does innovation really happen for the betterment of the efficiency of the asset? Because ultimately in real estate, if it doesn't create efficiency and if it doesn't create greater margin on the revenue versus expense side of the business, it's not as valuable. And I hate to say that that's like at the end of the day, that's the real litmus test, but at the end of the day, that's the real litmus test.
The numbers game from there.
Yeah, it's all math.
So, leading into AI now, where
Sure.
do you see pushback on AI, and which areas are you seeing that in?
I think it's just a general trust. I mean, again, to my earlier point, there's a lot of groups that are going forth and utilizing it. I know that all the brokerage houses that are investigating it. I know obviously some of the work that we're doing at JLL, this is no secret. We're looking at AI. That we would be completely stupid not to be. So I don't think I'm giving any trade secrets on that. But we're looking at it like everybody else is looking at it. And then I think it's the question of like, okay, you look at it, you make a value proposition, you understand what it does, and then it's like, and then what? And some of the differentiation in market, in my view, in the next few years, especially in the brokerage services business, and I'll just specifically speak to that, is are there going to be platforms that are acquired, are built, et cetera, on which to roll this stuff out? Because in the real estate space, if you do not own a system, so think like Yardi, MRI, Argus, down the line of all the other systems, Entrata, RealPage, et cetera. If you don't own, these major systems, it's really hard to collect the pertinent data. I mean, buildings are built off of rent rolls. That is your foundational data. That is where your tenants are known. That's where you are collecting revenue. And then you get to go in, and once you understand your tenants, then you're going to have to understand how your tenants operate inside your asset. And then once you understand how your tenants operate inside your asset, you want to try and get them to operate more efficiently inside your asset so that they like your asset, so that they stay in your asset. And basically that circle turns all the time in real estate. And so if I think about the pushback, I think the pushback is just the natural movement towards reducing friction, towards getting AI into these systems and getting AI then pushed out to create that efficiency that I've talked about earlier. There's just natural friction there. There was natural friction when there wasn't AI, and we were just trying to sell Dottid.
Yeah.
And it was just a
What's
workflow.
the cost for that? What's the cost for that friction?
What's the cause for that friction?
Yeah, what is that natural friction and what's behind it?
I would say a lot of real estate people don't understand how it all works. And that's not a slight at real estate people. I mean, until I dove deep, I didn't understand how it works. I mean, it sounds like Bianca, until you started working with ChatGPT and looking at different things, you didn't understand how things worked in the AI space. So it's new. Not everyone's a software engineer. Real estate and technology are two vastly different industries on their core. And so I think that friction is the technology side of the business trying to educate the real estate side of the business, and the real estate side of the business trying to understand if the technology side of the business is even valuable.
Yeah, it's like a human-centered business trying to merge with technology. Yeah.
And I think going back to one of the earlier questions about relationships, real estate's been done the same way for decades. And when that gets tinkered with, even on the margins, there's just walls put up. And I think that's a natural part of the evolution and the growth of the industry, frankly. But we'll see. We'll see how the next 3 years, 5 years evolve, and who really takes a step forward.
It's like the other edge of disruption, right? Everybody wants to use that word in such a positive way, ignoring the negative aspects of it.
Well, and it's funny. At Dottid, in our office, we never really loved the word disruption.
Yeah, I don't either.
Because I think in real estate, it's totally antithetical to what real estate people think about and what they care about. I want to use the word optimization because if I'm a broker, I want to be optimized for how many deals can I do as quickly as possible. If I'm a tenant, I want to find space as quickly as possible and sort through the noise. If I'm an owner of a building, I want to lease up my building. I want to get it functioning. I want to check and know my maintenance. I want to understand my insurance. And then ultimately, I want to sell that asset and I want to make money off of it. And I know that those things sound simplistic, and I'm not trying to just totally boil it down. But the word optimization is really where technology should be centered. And I feel like there's been a lot of technology that potentially hasn't been.
Yeah, I feel like in general, we've been painted a view of technology that leads to somewhat of a dystopian view. Shows like Black Mirror, shows that are out where, it turns into robots and then leads into a darker future. But I think that we can create something now that to combat that narrative, because it is so fantastic and it's helping so many people. People need to see the light part of it as well.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
Pretty great.
So as we move now into this, our audience is mixed because of the ViziSmart platform and the variety of users that we have on us. So our audience is mixed between landlords, property managers, tenants, and even vendors. So with that, would you have any words of wisdom to target the variation of our audience?
I would just encourage, try a lot of things. Technology, ultimately, at the end of the day, unless you're pretty silly with it, is not going to cost you a lot. I think the greatest innovations come from people who have failures, and the sooner you're wrong is generally the quicker you're right. And I think for just such a diverse user base, just try a lot of things, be educated, understand how ChatGPT works, understand how Claude works, understand the differences between the two. Anybody know what the differences are between the two? That, just really basic things. It's not, no one's asking you to go spend, $2 million on a new system and oh my gosh, it didn't work in 3 months and we just wasted all this money. No, just start on the margins. Start understanding where are the small areas where I can utilize new technology like AI to make my day better. Does that mean I need to put an email into a chat GPT or another AI source and get a better summary because I can be a better communicator? Or does it mean that I can go and understand my data better because I've got AI helping me run formulas quicker and put more metrics together and spitting out different charts and graphs and things that I haven't seen before. Basic stuff. We're not talking agentic agents that are replacing people that are automating the property
The
management task.
humanoid just yet.
Yeah, I mean that's like the fun stuff. That's where I think the real value creation can start to really happen. But we're not there yet. And so, I think in real estate, I think is always going to be a laggard just by the nature of the business. And so it's simple, basic, and usable. And it's really ultimately for the outcome of optimization. And I know that those are a lot of words, but again, feel like I've given some tactical, just like go try it, go be wrong. And I'm doing this with my parents. It's funny. I mean, I'm doing this with my dad. My dad's starting to learn ChatGPT. We've spent some time together to discuss it and what it means, and what you put in there is used in the next large language model. And it's like, okay, I don't need to put any massively sensitive items in here because it doesn't need to be used in the next large language model. But it does help on the margins, and that's where I think that real estate can really actually see an uptick in some of the innovation in the optimization.
That's fantastic. Do you have a, so this is kind of a surprise question for you. Do you have an advice for a company like ours, a startup that's actually venturing and actually hitting that friction on a path forward? What do you, in your experience or in your opinion, what would be the fastest way to kind of overcome that friction?
Overcome the friction? Man, it's a great question. Be really great about what your product does. Tell your product narrative super well. If your product narrative is not clean and crisp, and I think Meredith and you have actually even talked about some of this. If people don't know what they're buying and what the outcome of that value is, then I think that always just innately creates friction. And and so having an incredible product narrative and solving a real problem is something that I think is huge. I'll give just a little anecdote from Dottid. In the early days of Dottid, we actually really didn't solve that big of a problem, and it was an issue for us because we had a great product, but I think the problem set that we were looking at, it was just changing so fast. I mean, we launched with a kind of a beta product at the fall of 19, and then COVID happened February, March of 20. We got our first two customers on spring of 20, but then everyone was remote, and so we just were in this whiplash game of product functionality, and we made a actual shift actually just towards really building industrial feature sets, because if you remember at the time, industrial real estate just exploded. And there really wasn't anybody kind of targeting industrial, and we didn't do crazy things, but just giving the owners the ability to count the number of dock doors they had on a building and understand their truck port depth, and then if they had rail access or airport access at their buildings, basic stuff. But we created a product narrative about it, and it was really clear and simple. And the first six of our first 8 customers ended up being industrial clients. And I'm not saying that that's some massive amount of growth, but what I think it proved to me was, okay, A, we're solving a problem because no one has this data, no one has the information, so we're providing it. Cool. But B, we had to shift quickly. We had to tell the story, and we spent time and money to go in and make that happen. And that product narrative then ultimately, obviously, evolved, and then we got office clients back, and we got retail clients back, and we just made simple, little, agile shifts. And I think you have to also recognize when your product isn't meeting the need of market or is not telling the right story, how agile can you get? And so there was a lot of friction for us. There was a lot of friction just because of market. I think there's probably different friction that y'all are meeting in the sense of, hey, this is new and this is too innovative and this is you're too early. That's highly possible. Too early. So, okay, how do I combat that? How do I simplify some of what I'm doing?
Yeah.
How do I make it easier for the buyer to understand? Because if there's a mismatch on buyer basically value versus product value, then there's not going to be
What's the
There's
gap?
not going to
So the
be.
hard, I think the one difficult issue that we run into is being able to explain the difference between automation and having your intelligence that actually do functionality.
Sure.
And that people are just like, I have a form. And it's just like, well, would you like to not have one? You
Exactly.
know?
Well, and I think that also gets people get comfortable with their comfort.
Uh-huh.
And that sounds really silly, but it's so true. Like they
Yeah,
just
that's the
love their comfort.
disruption part.
Well, and I think the hard thing is like the user base in real estate generally has to be told what to use.
Mhm.
They're generally, unless you're a mid senior level technologist who loves this stuff, you just don't spend your days doing this. Like if I think about the property manager is dealing with tenants. They're relational. They are not in front of computers looking at AI models. They're not coding. They don't understand the difference between a back end and a front end. I mean, like, and that's okay. Like, that's not their job, like, plain and simple. And so I think I also had to learn in our space, I had too high of expectations on the knowledge set of our user base.
That's interesting.
And it wasn't because they were stupid or dumb or anything. It's just because it wasn't their job. They didn't run a technology company, and I
Yeah.
did, and that was just a mismatch on my end. And so, if you have misplaced expectations, you're likely going to have misplaced results. And so I did, and that was something we had to reframe. We had to go in and we had to change our collateral and change wording and language. I mean,
Message.
these type of things then lead into like, oh, you're more communicative from what you're selling and why you're selling it.
Mm.
And ultimately that reduced the friction that we faced in market. Again, we're not doing AI like y'all are. So I think there's even probably an even more enhanced hurdle that y'all are facing.
Mm.
And so I don't have like a magic bullet
Yeah.
for it, but I would get a real clear understanding of the expectation of your customer base and then kind of move from there.
I have a little bit of a more specific question. So,
Sure.
in terms of property management specifically, where people are very focused, they have their systems. So, there is, like a shift that they have to make in terms of thinking in an agentic framework where there are AI agents that can handle these tasks for you. And they're so used to, manually inputting all of these things, having their teams, trying to communicate with their teams to do that. Um, do you project that all-encompassing systems are more valuable than niche systems? Or do you think that niche systems with like a very clear value add will gain traction?
Man. That's a doozy of a question. It's a good question. It's just a hard one because there's problems on both sides. The niche systems don't have the entrenched user base and commitment to the product that obviously the all-encompassing platforms do. That's so like automatically you're at a massive disadvantage. And that was us. I mean, we were a second entrant to market, competing against basically $1 billion competitor. They did a little bit different stuff than us, but we were like the lower middle market competitor. So we were that niche, not really niche, but niche platform that's competing against the quote unquote all-in-one.
Right.
Fine. We obviously gained traction. We obviously won customers and we obviously did our thing. That's fine. But the inherent friction that we faced just because we were second to the table was massive in this space. Not being a first mover in commercial real estate is really hard. It doesn't mean it can't happen. There's been other great platforms that have done it, but it makes the table stakes a little bit higher in a lot of ways because you got to be really right about a lot of things to go win customers and to grow in the space. And so, fine. And then, of course, you've got your long-term like legacy platforms. Like I look at what JLL has with building engines, the Prism platform on the property management side, and they're the entrenched global leader in property operations software. And there's kind of no real question about that. I mean, they've got, a few billion feet on their product around the world, and that's a huge advantage for them when they go into any meeting because they're going to be part of the RFPs. They're going to get a phone call. They're going to be asked what they've got, and you've got systems that are competing with them in the market that are still trying to get that seat at the table. And so I think my overall viewpoint is basically it's hard for both sides because that entrenched legacy system also doesn't generally innovate as quickly. I'm not saying this is a Prism specific issue or not, but it generally doesn't innovate as quickly as the startup. The the headaches, the hurdles, the friction points to get things done are just a lot. When you have a lot more people, you have a lot more customers, it affects a lot more users. Every code merge, every PR request, it all matters a lot more when there's a few billion feet versus a few 100 million feet. Because if you mess something up, there's a lot of work to go to retrace the steps. So anyway, all that's to say, I think that yes, the niche systems can compete, but the niche systems have to really outperform in terms of product value. And that product value has to go in and then ultimately mean something at the bottom line for the owner. Like it's one thing we learned is we didn't build enough data visualization in Dottid early on because the data visualization was actually the ultimate thing that we learned was the needle mover for our customers. All the tenant information was great. All the workflow stuff was awesome. All that was fantastic and it worked super well. But we never translated it up early enough into like, what's the bottom line movement on my P&L as a property owner? And then we did it. And that was, we were starting down that road and building insights pages and doing all sorts of things, which was like a huge bottleneck ultimately for us in terms of product functionality and usage. It was just the next evolution. But again, it's things you just learn over time. You think that, oh my gosh, I got to solve the details, got to solve the weeds. How are you reporting on that? Because at the end of the day, the people making decisions at the property level, they look at spreadsheets and numbers. And if the math does not math and the numbers don't number, that's where the problems are.
To look at without that. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you create automation there? How do you get the new insights and combine the data sets? Like all this stuff we were starting to do, and we had built partnerships around it and done all sorts of crazy things. But we were probably a little slow at it. And it's just things you look back on, you just don't know at the time that you're slow at it.
And there's that difficulty that it's hard to visualize when you don't have data yet, too. Right? So it's like the chicken or the egg as well in that one.
And products are iterative, right? So you build the foundation and then you build on top of that.
Yeah, correct.
That's great. So in the world where you create a niche, on the follow-up to that, where you have a niche that actually plugs into existing platforms that are already the multi-billion scenario, to where you are not a standalone on your own, it's something you're adding an item that actually plugs in. Does that make any difference to that conversation, or is it just still the same? You're still
It does. It just, you got to look at your integration path. And you always, as a niche product, you always got to understand how reliant am I on someone else's data to make what I do well. Am I super reliant? Am I 50% reliant? Am I 10% reliant? Am I creating and generating my own data to where my product in and of itself is the value driver? Or am I totally reliant on someone else's data to go drive the value? So, and again, it can be either one. Like, I'm not saying it's like, oh my gosh, you're dead in the water if you're one or the other. But it's just a question you have to ask, because I think if you are the plugin, then the simple question is why wouldn't someone go build that? And obviously we could have a whole discussion on a lot of reasons why someone might go build that. That's never a good thesis. But at the end of the day, being that niche product, I think that's always in the back of your mind of like, okay, how am I continuing to drive value? How am I optimizing and innovating to where I am not solely reliant on whoever I'm plugging into, and I'm bringing my own thing to the table as they're getting value out of it? What's the value creation that I'm creating for that larger group and the larger entity? How do we work together?
Ideal. I feel like that's an ideal recipe if you're able to do that as a niche and be able to go at a table with a table that's already created, right?
Right.
And so how do you even like start that conversation with these like bigger players? If you are a plugin or something a little bit smaller, like how do you tell them, hey, I have value. I want to show you this value. Are you willing to entertain it?
Customers are a great first step. Customers need to tell the value. That was a huge thing for us. We had customers that switched onto our product and then told other customers about it, and we got cross-selling just because of the customer. And it was just like, hey, we were ultimately selling to their peers, and they made the introductions, and the customers are a great first step into showing what that value can be. Because if you share a customer base, then you kind of are both winning. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
obvious, like,
Self-proof. Yeah.
yeah, 1 + 1 = 3
Yeah.
situation. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
uh, I think that's a great first step. I think the other thing is one things that we did, and this is may have been totally dead wrong, who knows? I just told a lot of people about what we were building. Like a lot of people. There were a lot of random emails and a lot of phone calls, and just people would hang up, people wouldn't respond, LinkedIn messages that have still gone unread 5 years, 7 years later. But there was also a lot of people that did respond and then connected me. And then there was all those things. Like I know that over, gosh, I think I had close to 2,000 meetings in 4.5 years. Um, and I think the way the math works out on that is like there's
Same.
yeah, there's like let's be generous, there's 400 days in a year, which there's 4 years. Like that's like a meeting a day, basically trying to meet a new person a day for 4 years or so,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
um, that was a haul, but it was what I was trying to do to grow our spot in the market and just get people educated. You can do LinkedIn SEO as much as you want. You can do the Google ads, but there's no greater story than either y'all as the founders or your customers telling about your product. And don't be afraid to just call the firms, email them, find a connection, work your way up the food chain. It takes time, a lot of months. But that's where the conversations start. I mean, if you ask about how did you ever get in touch with JLL, I mean, that's literally how it happened. The person that we ultimately sold to at JLL and the whole business, I met through another guy on my team who met him at a conference 4 years ago.
Awesome.
Just,
Very,
just stuff
very
like
simple.
that. And then you become really thankful. You don't become arrogant or prideful about the relationships, and you just walk in humility to go in and say, "Hey, like this was a huge blessing. Let's go see if we can continue the conversation." Awesome.
I feel like gratitude gets you so far in
I
life.
hope. I hope that's
Uh,
been a good thing for us.
oh, thing.
We're very grateful for you for the time you gave us here. This has been fantastic, gold information and wonderful journey. So inspiring. Thank you.
Fair enough. Bianca, thank you so much. Really great. Fun to be here.
Yes, lovely to meet you.
Okay.